so I just thought of this, and I don't really think I've thought about it much my whole life. Basically, like ego, and typically when I think of ego, I think of people have like a big ego, and people are they're like, I'm really good at basketball, and they're always talking about how good they are at basketball. And I'm like, what does that got to do with anything unless we're playing basketball? And for playing basketball, all you have to do is be good. You don't need to tell me about it. So like in my mind, that's ego. But what if the ego is this identity, this character that's you, and this character has experienced this massive amount of information as life goes on, and that's your ego. And so you think about life, and you think of this was done to me, this was said to me, this befell me, or even this good thing happened to me, or a big mix of experiences. Say one day, I do not understand people in traffic. It doesn't make any sense. Say like through half the day, this really great thing happens to you, and the other half of the day, the really bad thing happens to you. And then when you think back to the bad thing and the good thing, you think about the whole experience, the good and the bad. All right, so now you take away the ego. So you still got your whole brain, dude. Got your brain, but now the ego is gone. So it's still you. You're talking, you're thinking, you're going about your business. You can make yourself a sandwich, but the ego, that little human you, that little character inside you that's experienced all those things, is gone or silent. So now the you that remembers your whole life is just remembering your whole life. When you think about good things that happen, you think about that day, you just think about that good thing. Like, you don't need to think about the bad thing too, because it's not the point. The only reason you would think about the bad thing that day when you think about the good thing is your ego would say, well, yeah, but also that day, my favorite toy broke. And it interferes with the memory of the good moment of getting a brand new toy. But if you remove ego, it's just the memory. And so without the ego, you remember all these great things in life, but you can also remember the bad things, but they would be separate and individual. If you thought of a bad thing, if you thought of breaking a toy 5 years ago, you're just like, oh man, I really like that airplane. You wouldn't think, oh, well, you know what? Then 5 years later, I broke another airplane. It's because they're really not connected. Like, a little bit they're connected in the similarity, and that your brain might make the connection to them. But the whole idea of, like, when someone holds up a card out of a deck of cards and says, remember this card, and it's like the Ace of Spades, just because it's similar to all the other cards in the deck, you don't think of like 51 other cards, but you'll do it with a memory. And I think the only reason you do it with a memory is because of the ego. The ego, like, oh, well, yeah, but by the way, I've lost more toys than that. Because it's important to that ego, that character. But overall, if you're just thinking about like a good time or a bad time, it's really not important. Like, they say that the reason why you remember these things is it would have a evolutionary benefit. Like, the more saber-toothed tigers you track, the more you have to remember all the times you've watched something go bad. Like, this is how Gorgor died. Gorgor didn't check behind him enough. But if you remove the ego, for instance, if someone just told you a story about Gorgor going out and getting this really great elk, and for Christmas everyone had a great dinner, that's not connected to your ego. And you would just tell the Gorgor story. And it's a really good story. It's a heartwarming story of Gorgor. Yeah, I've just never really thought about it. That there's a tiny little version of me in there that has a voice. And this voice wants to say all the good things and all the bad things at once. And if you talk about any topic, this little version of you thinks, well, how many other things are similar to this, or how many topics are like this that I could bring up? You know, like when you go somewhere and you're trying to focus on something, and then like part of your brain says, I wonder if I left the stove on. You know, like that ego part of you sure wants to make sure you didn't forget the stove, but seemingly 90% of that information just seems like, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me. Like your inner voice constantly needing your attention, constantly needing your distraction. So, you know what? Here's what I'm kind of thinking. I think we're not our ego. I think the actual me that's making decisions today and driving along and what have you is actual me. The person, you know, with the skills and the plans and the ideas. And then that voice that says, well, are you sure you should be? Or, well, don't you think what would be better is? I think that's the ego. And I think the ego is helpful. But also, I would say it's more distracting than it is helpful. God, that person, I'm just going to slow down a little bit. Yeah, that person is not doing okay. I would say the ego is almost always more distractful than it is helpful. Like I think that there's times, obviously, where you want to meditate or focus or use mental discipline to control the experience you're having. Like in a stressful situation, you want the fears, the fearful you, to be quiet, so you can focus and handle the fearful situation. So that mental discipline is important. But maybe it's important to, more often than not, quiet your ego on a daily basis. Maybe having your ego settle down is kind of like having a child, man. Like you want a child around your house. It's good to have the child around. It's good to actually hear what the child has to say. But then sometimes you have to say it like you care about it. Like, all right, we're settling down right now. Right now we're going to have dinner, so we don't need a lot of extra thoughts about, the past or work, or this one time this one guy said this, or remember that time you went to a restaurant, order a meal, and it never came. It's like settle that voice down. I guess I would say overall the ego isn't as important as I think it is, and the ego can be really detrimental if you're not aware of what it is and what it does. And I feel kind of confident in saying that the vast majority of the things that the ego says to me, or probably says to all of us, is distracting and too much and not helpful. I was thinking of a quote the other day, or maybe the day before, about this priest, and the priest says, even the straw beneath my knees seeks to distract me from prayer. And that's the thing, like he's kneeling down to do something important, and the ego says, oh man, there's so much straw on the floor, it's kind of biting into your knees. It's gonna leave marks. You're gonna have red marks on your knees later. It's like, sure, like you could totally hear that voice, right? Like, sure, but that's not important right now. Like right now, right now we're praying, or we're doing whatever, we're making dinner, and you need to simmer down. And we're going to pray right now. We're going to eat dinner right now. We're going to focus on this right now. So take those thoughts about straw and put them up on a shelf. And tomorrow, when you're all sitting down with the other priests having coffee, you're like, do you ever check your knees after a long prayer session to see how bad the straw's messed up your skin? You're like, I have.